Okay, now we're going to talk about the third song on our rock riffs. And there's a couple new things you need to learn to play this one as well. This song is an old song by Lynyrd Skynyrd called Simple Man. And it features what's called arpeggiated chords, so you're going to have to learn a technique called cross-picking. Okay, so the first thing to notice is that the first measure does not start on beat 1. You'll see a dotted half note rest, which takes up the first 3 beats. The first 2 notes you play are on beat 4, and then the end of 4, those 2 eighth notes. This technique is called an anacrusis. Sometimes it's called an upbeat, where you count in and you actually start before beat 1. The second thing that you need to notice is what's called repeat signs, and they kind of look like the double bar lines, but you see the 2 dots facing forward, and at the end of the riff you see the 2 dots facing backwards. So when you see a forward facing repeat sign, you'll know that you're going to see a backwards facing one, and it just simply means that you play to the end of the repeat and go back and play it over again. In this song you play it a number of times before moving on to the next riff. Okay, then the next new thing you need to learn, if you look at the very last measure of the song, you'll see a high note G, which is played on the 3rd fret of the 1st string, and you'll see that there's 2 eighth notes with that note, but there's a little curved line over them, and that's called a tie. So when you play a tie, you play the first note that's written, and then the second note of the tie, you don't play it again, you just let it sustain. So that's the only note in the song that's not a straight eighth note. Every other note is eighth notes, and when you get to that tie, it starts on an end, and then it goes into the next beat, but you don't play it again. So effectively, it lasts as long as a quarter note because it's 2 eighth notes. Okay, the next thing you need to learn is when you look at the tabs for this song, you'll notice that in each measure, the notes are a little different, but during each measure, on any given string, the notes never change. And you see that the notes are skipping strings, going up and down. And this is common when you're playing what's called an arpeggiated chord. So in the previous song, we strummed the chords and played all the notes at once. In this song, you hold the chord and play one note at a time in what's called an arpeggio. And this is easy to spot in tablature. Like I said, when you see the same note played on a given string without changing through a measure or even 2 measures. So the first measure, you see a C chord with the index finger on the 1st fret on the 2nd string, open 3rd string, 2nd finger on the 2nd fret on the 4th string, and your 3rd finger on the 3rd fret on the 5th string. Then the next measure, that changes to what's called a G/B chord, and you leave your index finger on that 1st fret on the 2nd string, but then the other 2 fingers you let go, and you move your middle finger to the 2nd fret on the 5th string. Then the last measure, or last 2 measures, you play what's called an A minor 7 chord. So the second to last measure, you just move to an A minor chord, again leaving your index finger on the 1st fret on the 2nd string, and then you put your 2nd finger on the 4th string, 2nd fret, 3rd finger on the 3rd string, 2nd fret, and then in the last measure, without lifting any of the other fingers, you add your pinky in on the 3rd fret on the high E string, and that can be a little challenging for some beginners, but you don't want to let go of the other notes before playing that G. Okay, on to our third rock riff. This one, a lot of students haven't heard, but the song was pretty famous when I was younger. It's a song by Lynyrd Skynyrd called Simple Man. And as we talked about, this is arpeggiated chords. So I'm going to show you the right hand first. So the first 2 notes, or first 3 notes, are all on the same string. So I'm going to use that alternate picking to play those. But then when I play the chords, I'm going to follow this rule where if I'm going down a string, I'll pick downwards. If I'm changing to a string that's upwards, I'll pick upwards. So, like the first chord is a C chord. You see how I pick down and up? And I've got that part of my palm again resting here so I can feel where everything is without having to stare at my right hand. So I'm going to play this slow, and so you can see what my right hand is doing. Okay, so that's the right hand. You see how I pick back and forth depending on which direction I'm changing strings. Now if we look at the left hand, I start off and I follow that rule that we did on House of the Rising Sun. Once I've got that note for the C chord in measure number 1, I put my fingers down in order. Now for the rest of the song, I never have to move my index finger. So the next chord, I simply move my second finger here. And then the third chord, A minor, my third finger goes on the third string. My middle finger goes on the fourth string. And at the very end, I have to reach and grab that last note with my pinky while holding the other notes. You can't let go of these and use your third finger up here or something like that, because you want it to ring real nice. And you can also hear that little pause where there's the tie on this G note that we talked about earlier in the video. Okay, so that's it for what we call, sometimes it's called cross-picking or arpeggiated chords. Hope you have fun with this song.